Welcome to Boswell Book Company's virtual event series. It is day 4,529 of us being in business. I wanted to mention that tonight's event is being recorded, so you will be able to share it with friends, family, fellow historical fiction lovers. This is Zoom webinar, so you will be able to ask questions in chat. This is a monitored chat, so if you send comments to the chat, it'll come to me and I will forward back some of them to the general audience. And our conversation partner, Jennifer Chiaverini, will be looking at the chat and asking some of those questions, incorporating them into tonight's conversation. We are so honored to have Roxanne Veletzos, author of When the Summer Was Ours, a new historical novel, an epic World War II tale of star-crossed lovers separated by class, circumstance, and tragedy. She's been getting raves from all your favorite historical fiction writers. In fact, when we hosted Kristen Harmel a couple of months ago, she talked up the book. She called it a fast-paced, illuminating, gorgeously written epic, a compulsively readable tale of loss and love during and after the Second World War. It is a masterpiece. Gillian Cantor, Genevieve Graham, Lisa Wingate, and one Jennifer Chiaverini, who wrote When the Summer Was Ours, is a breathtaking romance that unfolds in a richly drawn landscape of war and loss, a gripping, unforgettable story of enduring love and fragile yet indomitable hope that sustains the human heart through tragedy to redemption. Roxanne Veletzos is also the author of The Girl They Left Behind. She's born in Bucharest, Romania, and draws from her family's experience and history in her writing. In addition to her work in fiction, she's worked as an editor, content writer, and marketing manager. Jennifer Chiaverini is the author of so many wonderful historical novels. We were oohing and eyeing over them during our practice session, including most recently The Women's March and one of my favorites, Resistance Women. You've been hearing a lot about Mildred Fish Harnack because of the New York Times bestseller bio from her, I think it's great niece. I think I might have that wrong. And so if you're enjoying that, you're definitely gonna wanna go back and read Resistance Women. It is so wonderful to have both of you tonight. Thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna disappear now. Welcome.
Wow, thank you, Daniel. That's so awesome. And welcome, Roxanne. I feel like I can welcome you from the Bay Area to Wisconsin. I'm not actually at Boswell Books, but I'm about, 90-minute drive west. But I still consider Boswell Books my neighborhood bookstore because it's just one of those fantastic independents. And it's just so lovely to have you here virtually. Maybe one of these days we'll be able to meet in person.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
And thank you all to all of you wonderful attendees for coming. And I mean, Danielle already told you what I thought about the book. I was lucky enough to get to read it in manuscript form. And it's everything that I said, but it's also so much more because you have to keep these quotes kind of brief. And I did the best I could. I know mine went on for a while, but it's just because I just absolutely love this book. And if you love historical fiction, you will want to pick up this book and read it too. You will fall in love with it the same way I did. And I could rave and rant and just go on for a while, but let's hear from Roxanne. For anyone, and I'm going to try so hard not to have any spoilers, but there's just so much I want to talk about this book, but I will do my best to say no spoilers. So let's toss it over to Roxanne. And if you could just tell everyone just briefly, what is this story about? And, who are some of the people that we're going to meet right away?
So When the Summer Was Ours is an epic story of war and forbidden love that takes place in Hungary during the Second World War and then the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, and takes us all the way into the final years of Cold War in New York. It centers on a pair of star-crossed lovers, Ava and Alejandro, who meet quite by chance on the eve of war in the Hungarian countryside, and not only fall deeply in love, but set in motion a chain of events that will not only deeply alter their lives, but that will echo through generations. The story starts out in the summer of 1943, at a time when Hungary finds itself in a precarious place in regards to the war. Although Hungary is at this point aligned with Nazi Germany and is contributing troops and oil in the invasion of the Soviet Union, the region of Hungary is actually refusing to begin mass deportations. And so everyone is fearing that a full invasion of Hungary is forthcoming. So
And they had good reason to fear that.
Yes. It was playing a very dangerous game.
Yes.
A razor's edge game. So it is at this time that's sort of very uncertain and volatile that we meet Ava, who is a very willful and independent and unconventional young woman, as she arrives in the town of Sopron to spend her last summer as a single woman on her family's estate. And, you know, she is, at this point, her thoughts are not really so much on the war as much as on her upcoming wedding to a Red Cross doctor that she very much admires. A man who can not only sort of wrench her from her life of her high society life that she finds very constraining, but can also kind of help her further her own ambitions of pursuing a medical career. Of course, this perfect vision for the future is completely disrupted when one afternoon in town square, Ava accidentally meets Alejandro. And Alejandro is a passionate Romani fiddler, an artist, and he's struggling to support his younger brothers in a nearby Romani camp. So they're from utterly different worlds. But nonetheless, this meeting is pivotal for them both, and it really just sort of throws them and their lives into the wheels of history. And so I'll just end by saying that in addition to being a story of an enduring love that survives through 5 decades of war and occupation and revolution and great injustice, it is also a story about the power of friendship and art to sustain us in dark times, about reinvention after profound loss and second chances, and the toll of secrets. So that's my quick description.
And it's all that and just so much more. Beautiful descriptions, wonderful, fully realized characters that you will think are just living right there on the page. It's absolutely fabulous. And just to give readers a sense of your language and these characters, could you read us a brief excerpt just to tease us a little bit?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. So this is actually from in the first several chapters of the book, and it's I'm only going to read a short segment, but it's a pivotal segment because it's at this point in time that Ava and Alejandro's relationship kind of takes a new dimension and is sort of like a catalyst for what happens in the rest of the story and propels it forward. So here we go. At the fishing pond, where she'd seen others pass en route to the gypsy camp, she sat in a shady patch and waited, watching the half-naked children splash about in the water. A group of women washed clothes, stretching them out to dry on the bedrock, and she felt self-conscious, knowing that in their pleasant enough smiles, her presence was seen as an intrusion. She withstood their looks nonetheless, but after nearly an hour, she was ready to bite back. It was not disappointment she felt, but almost a sense of relief. She had come after all, and nothing happened. But as she positioned her bike and checked the tires, she saw him, her fiddler. His eyes, she could see even from this far away, were pinned to the ground, the fiddle strap drawn across his chest, a look of consternation in the crease of his eyebrow. When he saw her, he froze, his hands coming down slowly from the strap and landing at his sides. He was wearing the same outfit from the night of the villa, and seeing him again for what he was pierced the grandiose fantasies she'd been entertaining all day. Turning her bike around, Ava began walking it the other way, guiding it alongside the edge of the water. She did not know if he would follow. She no longer knew what she'd intended to say at all. She passed the children, through willows that dove into the bank, through the ensuing patch of reed beds, and farther on. At the narrow wooden pier, she stopped and turned to look behind her, and he was still there. Leaning her bike against a tree, she lifted the sketchbook from the basket, held it in her outstretched hands as some kind of an offering. "These," she began, "they are yours." She felt slightly off kilter, being so close to him in daylight, the slant of sun falling between them, offering a barrier so easily crossed. He walked into it and beyond it, closing the space between them, and she felt herself stepping back as if reaching for some safeguard that wasn't there. Sensing it, he turned toward the lake, ran a hand through his hair. "Do you like them?" "Like them? Yes, but why?" Ava said simply. "I can't explain why, only that I wanted you to have them. Think of them as a gift." "A gift?" "Yes, a gift. Do you not believe in gifts, Ava?" He turned to her, held her gaze, and in the silence it seemed to her that a different conversation was taking place. His eyes danced with light, as if no further explanations or reasons were needed, as if any words beyond the one spoken would only reduce what his drawings meant. They were more than a gift. It was clear in the way he'd drawn her, in the way he was looking at her now, and she knew that she should go, that she should set the sketchbook on the grass and climb back on her bike, right back to the villa. But she did not move, and she felt some inexplicable sadness or regret rising up within her, which she couldn't push back. Stepping closer, he reached for her hand, flooding her with the familiarity of the night on the bench. "I don't know why I drew them, Ava, only that it's something I had to do, and I wanted you to see them. I hoped that you would see in them what I see. They are beautiful, the most beautiful things I've ever seen." "They are true," he said in reply, and they both looked out to the glassy pond where a fishing canoe glided solitarily. That's it.
And we know she's not going to get on that bike and drive back. That
Yes.
is so not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But
Right.
oh my goodness, what different lives. And see, I think of them as real people. What different lives they would have lived if she had gotten on the bike and ridden away.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
also glad she didn't. So everything that happens, it's tragic and joyful, and Heidi has written in the chat, beautiful, and I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
So Roxanne, your first book, as Daniel said in the introduction, that you're originally from Romania, now you're living in California. And so your first novel, The Girl They Left Behind, it was inspired by your own family's experiences. And it was set in your native Romania. When the Summer Was Ours is set, and of course the characters do, over these decades that you mentioned in your opening, they do travel beyond Hungary, but for the most part, it is set in Hungary. So I have to tell you, this is what first intrigued me when I first heard about your book. It's that, I love historical fiction, obviously. I love reading about World War II and all of the different aspects, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of World War II fiction, at least available, and published in the US, that talks about Hungary. So
Right.
I was really intrigued by that, because it's not, and I even have, they weren't Hungarians, they were Danube Swabians, ethnic Germans who settled in the 1700s in the Banat. So I don't have ethnic Hungarian ancestors, but I do have ancestors who immigrated to the US from Hungary. So I thought, well, I don't know anything about this region and what went on in World War II. And so that's what first drew me to your book. And I'm wondering, why did you decide to set the story in Hungary? What was it about? What was the inspiration behind this novel, and why was it so important to you to have it take place in that country?
So, the cornerstone of my novel was really the Romani experience during World War II and what happened to them in that time, which is really quite dramatic. I mean, for people who don't quite know, they suffered a fate that was very similar to that of the Jewish population in terms of being stripped of all their rights and possessions and being subjected quite often to these horrible medical experiments in labor and concentration camps. And in fact, a quarter of the Roma population, which is the largest ethnic minority in Europe, died during that time. So this is actually what drew me to the story. As I said, it became its foundation. And so I had already written a book about Romania. And just to preface, like a little bit, the Romani community is really, really concentrated, not just in the Balkan states, but especially in Hungary and Romania. So having had just already written about Romania, I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit so that I'm not repeating the same historical elements that are actually present in both books. And Hungary just seemed like the natural choice. I also felt that I had a little bit of a connection with Hungary, even though I'm not Hungarian. But my father's actually from Transylvania, which is the border region between, and I think Banat, it might be as well.
Well, my husband's grandfather, his family is from Transylvania.
Amazing. Yeah, so my father was from Cluj-Napoca, and which actually at some point in history was part of Hungary, and then so this region shifted back and forth between the two countries. And so he would often talk about, I mean, he wasn't Hungarian either, but had grown up in this area that was heavily inhabited by the Magyar population. And so I kind of grew up and heard many stories that he had told me about Transylvania and Hungary, and in particular about the Hungarian Uprising of '56, which I end up writing about later in the novel.
Yes.
So it was
some
like
very harrowing, breathtaking scenes. Wait, you'll love it.
Sorry.
Just wait till you get to that part.
I apologize, but anyway, so it was just a combination of these elements.
Yeah. So in both of your books, there was really some element of your own family experiences that kind of inspired you to write that story and tell that story. That's really, really interesting.
And I want to add also that as a child, growing up in Romania, I was familiar with the Romani culture because, as I had just mentioned, they're just as they lived in Romania just as much as they did in Hungary. So I grew up, sort of around their culture. I was always sort of fascinated with their very free and independent spirit. I fell in love with their music. I think when I was 3 or 4 years old. I still love their music. It's my favorite music. But at the same time, I had also seen firsthand how they were really excluded by mainstream society and really treated as second-class citizens. And sadly enough, we still see this in Europe today. And so when I came across this other story, when I came across the story about what had happened to them during the Second World War, it just struck a chord. And it was maybe because of that early connection that I felt with their culture or their music, that it just sort of like gave me this extra interest in it and made me decide that I wanted to put this in a novel.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I just really love your rich, detailed descriptions of all of your settings.
Thank you.
And I especially love the description of Sopron. Am I saying that correctly? I hope I'm saying that correctly. And there was one, I just want to find it. I have it here. I thought I bookmarked it, but now I can't find it, that I just loved it. And I think I read this during the winter. Oh, yes. And it talks about when Ava because she lives in the city. She lives in Budapest.
Yes, right.
And in the summer, she goes out to Sopron, right?
Right.
And I just want to read this, if you'll indulge me, because I just love it. I read this in the winter. Okay. That entire week after her arrival, the first thing Ava did in the morning was to pull open the shades and let in the sunshine and fresh air. Still in her pajamas, she turned on some soft music, sipped her coffee, walked barefoot through the hillside, picked grapes from the vines. She ate them right there on the spot, not bothering to wash them, relishing in the sweet, tangy taste, then slipped down to the kitchen and helped Dora prepare a meal. The tomato vines in the vegetable patch by the kitchen had exploded in huge, plentiful fruit, and she would bring them inside in a basket along with some fresh thyme, which had sprouted unexpectedly on the side of the wall. Aside doors, she would slice the tomatoes in a dark loaf of bread, flatten the glistening cloves of garlic into a paste with the blade of a knife. More often than not, they ate right there at the kitchen table. Such simple pleasures. She had no idea how she'd survived without them an entire year. And I just thought, yes, that is summer. That is summer. That is just, and you can just feel how your Ava feels going to this family estate. And I wondered, is it based upon any place that you know? Is it any place that you've seen? And what does Sopron represent? I mean, aside from just being this beautiful, lush place that all of your readers can visit through the pages of your book, what does it represent for Ava?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and I think if there's any connection that I could make for my own personal life is that as a child in Romania, I would go with my grandmother and my sister every summer, and there was this estate just outside of Bucharest that was very similar. It wasn't quite as posh as the villa that Ava lives in, but it was a ranch. And it was one that we would visit every summer, and we would stay for quite a bit of time, I think at least a month. And it had a sort of same ambiance of complete serenity and calmness and beauty. And I just remember like waking up in the morning, even then as a kid, and just feeling so free because I could run through these fields and chase chickens and go down to the river and, poke around stones and, whatever little kids do. But it was just so freeing and so starkly different from living in Bucharest, which much like Budapest is a very busy, concentrated urban city. And especially in when I was a child, it was still in the years of the Iron Curtain. So it was like a very bleak and dark place. And so this was freedom. This ranch that we would visit was just utter freedom. So I think if there's anything, it's kind of interesting, Jennifer, right? Because you sometimes don't even make the connections right away. Like, why did I write about that? But it was there. Yeah. And so thank you for asking the question. That's a great question.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Just reading it again was just wonderful. I felt like I was getting out of my Wisconsin winter and just enjoying a lovely sun-splashed villa of my own. And even the flavors come through too. I really thought that was wonderful. But as much as this is this idyllic retreat for Ava, and as much as she thinks she's got it all planned out, she's going to have her wedding, right. And I think it's really important that you mentioned she really admires Edward. You didn't say she's passionately in love with Edward. And I think, yes. You might, I don't know, but she does, there are many, many things she admires about him. Yes. There are so many wonderful qualities. And that's one of the things that I loved that you did, because she is torn between these two men, between these two very different men who love her. And it would be so easy to direct, we've seen stories that do this where it's very clear that the one guy is all wrong for her, and right. The reader is meant to really love this guy, but you didn't make it that simple.
No.
So these characters are so richly complex that you can really see why Ava is torn, because they're both good men, but you know them better than us. What is it? Because they're so different. Yeah. What is it about each man, these very different men, that makes them so attractive to Ava? What is it about each one right. that draws her in?
So Ava is a bit of a complicated or complex. I don't want to say complicated. She's a complex character. Complex,
and that's the way we want her.
Yeah,
we want we want our protagonists to be, multifaceted and all this wonderful stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, first of all, she's extremely independent. She's willful. She's ambitious. She wants to make her own way in life. She feels very stifled by her high society world, which it could be. I have
And
no
her
doubt it was.
father.
And her father is
Whole other
tyrannical.
relationship that
Yeah.
readers just wait. Dear reader, just wait till you get there.
He's a
piece of work.
a tough nut to swallow. Let's put
Yes,
it
he
that way.
is. Yes, but
And,
anyway.
and she feels really stifled by him and wants to make her own way in life. And so suddenly, this man appears in her life, and I'm speaking of the doctor Edward, who represents that freedom for her. And more than that, he represents the freedom. He's a doctor, and she's been obsessed with medicine and biology and studying medicine. Since she was a child, she was really interested in the anatomy of the human body. It really fascinated her. And so she had always wanted or hoped that someday she would be able to somehow step outside of her sheltered life and pursue a career as a nurse or anything in the medical profession. So meeting this man for her really represents two facets of it represents really her ambition. He can really help her further these dreams. He can give her this independence, and she does admire him a great deal because obviously they're drawn to the same profession. He's also a very noble man. He's I think when we meet him, he's at a hospital in Budapest, and it's at a time when the Russian army is retreating, or I'm sorry, the German army is retreating, and so the hospital is deluged with German and Hungarian soldiers, and he's fully committed to helping. And I'm sorry, I'm probably going on too long.
No.
Is it okay? Okay.
Keep going.
All right. Alejandra, on the other hand, represents her heart and true freedom. She's really drawn right away to his bohemian lifestyle. She's drawn to the fact that he embraces his art and his music so wholeheartedly. She loves the fact that he's so dedicated to his family and his community, because that's something that she doesn't experience in her life. I think there's actually a passage where she says she would never know such closeness. She would never know what it's like to share such closeness. So these are all facets that draw her in the other direction. So I mean, I guess in a nutshell, it's for her was a balance between her ambition and drive for freedom and independence and her heart.
Yes.
I'm sorry that took forever to answer.
No. We wanted.
I'm a writer. I'm not very good at short answers.
That's why you're here to talk to us about all of this wonderful information. Well, Christine has asked a question. She said you both have gorgeous book covers. Oh, thank you. I paint them all
Thank
the time.
you.
But the question for Roxanne is, do you have any input on your covers? And I will agree with Christine, your book covers are beautiful. And I noticed that there's a slight difference between the one that's published here in the US and the one that I think is coming out in Australia.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. But what kind of input, if any, did you have into the choice of the gorgeous cover?
Thank you.
On When the Summer Is Ours.
Thank you quite a bit, and I'm really fortunate because I with my team at Atria, I feel like it's been such a great, really collaborative process, and not just in the editorial process, but even extending to something like cover design. So I was presented with, I think, 3 or 4 different options. We kind of narrowed that down a little bit. It ended up, we ended up changing or altering that one a little bit, but at every step of the way, I was definitely, I'm not a creative, so I mean, I had nothing to do with putting together this beauty, but it was definitely, I was definitely involved in that process, which I really appreciated. And truly, when I saw this, it was like, okay, well, I mean,
how could you not love it?
It's done. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and just thank you. And then Roxanne, and then anybody else, if you have a question for Roxanne, please do put it in the chat and I will make sure to ask it. And then you know, other characters that I love in this book, and that's one of the other great strengths of your writing, is that you don't save all the good stuff for your leads and then just have a little ensemble. All of your secondary characters are as fully present and as fascinating as, you know, our star-crossed lovers. And one particular favorite for mine was Rudolph. And I don't want to have no spoilers. Sorry. I hope I don't want to spoil too much, but without spoiling too much, what can you tell readers about this particular character? And I'm really curious to know, how did you come up with him? He just had so much life in him.
Yeah.
In just absolute dire circumstances.
Yes.
And I will let you reveal, because I don't want to be the one to spoil it, but you're the author, so you divulge as much as you want. But I'm really wondering, what inspiration, or how did you come up with such a wonderful, you know, secondary character as Rudolph?
So I have to say, Jennifer, Rudolph is absolutely my favorite secondary character as well. I loved him. I loved his energy. And he actually evolved so organically. I mean, I knew in the story that, and again, gosh, it's so hard to talk about it, isn't it? Without.
Well, you know what? Sorry, guys, we might spoil a few things, but
yes.
Believe me, you know, it won't feel spoiled. You will love. You will not be able to put. I've read the book twice. I read the book once.
Thank you.
I just had to see what's going to happen. No, don't do it. Oh, she did that. No. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So I was reading and turning pages, but then I had to go back and read it again and just luxuriate in, you know, the garlic being pressed by a knife.
Oh my gosh.
So wonderful. So anyway.
That is the highest compliment. Oh my gosh.
We might spoil a few things, folks, but it won't feel spoiled. So spoilers aren't going to apply, you know.
Okay, well, I will try
and love it when you get there. You're going to love it when you get there, no matter what. So anyway, let's
I'll keep it broad as much as I can. So when Alejandro finds himself in this very difficult, desperate situation in his life,
yes,
and he's heartbroken because of some excruciating personal losses, this man sort of comes into his life and not only provides a different perspective on the situation that they're both involved in, but also really helps Alejandro to really put his talent to a use that kind of renews his will for life and his optimism, and it gives him a purpose. It ends up changing Alejandro's life truly for forever. Mm-hmm. And just so Rudolph, I actually, gosh, I don't know that there was a particular inspiration. He is one of those characters that just evolved so organically. It's almost like he stepped into these pages and announced himself. Here I am.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was so easy to write. You know, sometimes you struggle with some characters. You have to kind of let their personalities simmer so you really understand them. And he just presented himself and like walked in the door and said, "Here I am."
Yeah.
And
he feels that real. He feels that real, like you did.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the book without him.
I agree. I loved him. And, you know, there were there was a couple of scenes that really go into his life in more depth, and unfortunately those ended up being cut because an editorial.
Email them to me.
No. I will if you. It's actually just one scene but you know, so even though that scene did not end up kind of in the final pages,
that's the way it goes
really
sometimes.
Frame him in my mind so clearly.
Right. So some of the writing is for the final book, and some of that is for you.
Absolutely.
To discover the character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And to send to me because I'm Rudolph's #1 fan. And you know what? I have to say, you should offer master classes on how to describe things eloquently with no spoilers, because I don't know how you did it, but you did it. So, and now when you all read the book, if you haven't yet, you'll understand you'll understand why I just adore him so much. And you'll understand, oh yes, that is what Roxanne meant. And it'll all be clear then. But no, all of these characters from, and see, I can't spoil things, but Yeah. Oh, you'll just love them. Except for the ones you're not meant to love. Oh, then you'll hate them. Ooh. You'll know them when you see them. You'll know the ones you're not going to love. They announce themselves early. So I think a question that I get a lot, and I bet you probably do too. So I imagine it's interesting. And I have to say, Christine Mott also wrote, I used to live in Wisconsin. Oh, the winters. And then she's laughing with tears coming out of her eyes. Yes, we all feel that way, Christine. Here, but our summers and falls are beautiful. And if you love winter sports, Wisconsin's actually pretty awesome. And don't try to talk Roxanne out of coming here. So.
Oh no, I'm from Bucharest, Romania. I know
how.
how.
Oh, you can handle it.
They don't.
You got it.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, especially perhaps in the era of COVID, when it is very difficult to travel places and walk the streets and talk to people who live there and all of that. How did you conduct your research for this novel? And, what is your process like? Do you start with, well, you told us about this a bit in the beginning, but how do you research a book just in general? And did that have to adapt like so many other things?
Oh my God. Well,
our pandemic age.
Oh my gosh. No. So just to begin to say, I had a trip to Europe planned for that summer with my family because
for
I
summer
actually
2020.
Yeah, and it would have been my family, my boys' first time actually getting to see my native city. And once you're in Eastern Europe, you're sort of spending, that is the trip. You're there for the time being. And unfortunately, that trip was we had booked it in, I think, March, and of course in June we canceled it. Or no, it was before COVID, so it was in January perhaps.
Yeah.
June it all fell apart.
Yeah.
So that alone, I felt like it. Gosh, because I really wanted to have the opportunity to connect personally, with. I mean, as I said, I already know it from my past and other trips, but it would have been nice to just actually kind of have that chance for that final reconnection before the print went to editorial.
Right.
So I did end up having to just rely on history books, tons of video archives, and thank goodness that we have them. I mean, I think as historical fiction authors, we are so lucky in this day and age because there's honestly so much information out there, and not just about the events, but I think what I also focused on a lot was the personal experiences of people that went through these events, which was enormously helpful. So like testimonials and filmed interviews of people that had lived through the Hungarian Uprising in particular. So things like that were like really kind of grounded the story for me. And I had to do the best, with what I had and
reading it sounds like you were sitting there just like taking notes of things that, because it feels, you feel like you're fully immersed in this world.
Thank you.
Readers will, whether it's in Hungary or when it goes to Austria or when it goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
You do feel fully immersed in. So whatever you're doing, it works. It's working because you feel fully immersed in all of these different environments.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very much. I'm happy that worked out. I in a sense, I think it helped that I had a sense for the people and the culture and the architecture. But it was a lot of. I mean, I paid a lot of attention to those details.
And it shows. It really shows.
Thank you.
Then I have a question for you. It's another one that I get a lot, and I'm really interested in what your take on this is. Now, you and I both love historical fiction. We both write historical fiction, and I can tell from the amount of detail and from what you've told me here is that you love to do this historical research. You love to delve into the archives and find out what really happened, and not only what happened, but what it was like, what it felt like to live there. And readers have asked me, and I want to know what you think, if this question is posed to you, if you get all this historical information and you care so much about getting the history right, then why not write nonfiction? You got all the factual information. Like in the case of your first book, why not write a biography or a memoir? Why write all of this rich history as historical fiction instead of biography or memoir or history, what is it about historical fiction that speaks to you, that draws you in, that has chosen you, or you have chosen it for your genre? What is it that for you, you can do with historical fiction that you couldn't maybe do or maybe not do as well, or it just wouldn't be as meaningful to you if you did it as nonfiction?
I mean, I am addicted to fiction, to books, to novels, I should say. I mean, I'm truly addicted to it. And so for me, the focus is, as you said, the descriptions, kind of, you know, transporting the reader as much as the writer, being transported to a place, discovering it a little bit at a time. I mean, I you know, and lyrical prose to me is just so gorgeous. I honestly think of it as an art form.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I pull it off. It's
Oh,
just
you
that
do.
to me, it's an art form. Writing is an
pull it
art
off.
form. It's that art form that I'm drawn to. And that's why I think for me, it's always going to be fiction, historical fiction, but in the format of fiction and not as a biography or anything else. I don't know if that answers it. What about you, Jennifer? Is that how you feel as well, or?
Well, yeah, I think you've captured it really well. And one thing that I love about historical fiction is that, you know, it doesn't only tell readers what happened, but it also tells them what it was like, what it felt like. And of course, you know, there's so much that's left out of the historical record, that, you know, all these private conversations and innermost thoughts that don't make it into even the best archive that you can find.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that by writing historical fiction, we're really, you know, first we do it for ourselves as we're researching and writing, but then when we present the story to someone else, we're really offering them an opportunity to view the world, whether it's this scene or this location or this historical event or these decades from, you know, 1943 into 1990. We're allowing them to view all of that from someone else's perspective.
Right.
And I really think that that helps develop empathy in a reader, because it's no longer just what happened, but what did it look like to this individual? And I think that helps us become better readers. And I also think it helps us become better people. So as you can see, I have a very high opinion of historical fiction.
Well, you do such a beautiful job. And as we were saying right before we went live, I just absolutely adore your writing. The Women's March was gorgeous. And it was one of those books, as you just said, that is so informative. I mean, I actually learned so much about the women's suffrage movement, but I didn't feel, it didn't in any way feel as nonfiction. I mean, your writing is so elegant, and and it's evident how much work and heart you put into how you craft your prose. And I think, like, as somebody who's like a prose junkie, that for me is just gorgeous. I mean, that's what makes, you know.
Go ahead, sorry. That's
No,
one of the drawbacks of online. You know, you talk over each other sometimes. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, so
from the readers, maybe you can post in the chat, what is it that you love about historical fiction? You know, tell us what is it that you love about historical fiction? I mean, I love to read lots of different genres, you know.
Right.
I don't, you know, why there's so much wonderful fiction out there. Why limit yourself to one genre? But, you know, what is it about historical fiction that especially appeals to you as a reader? And then we also have a question from Heidi. And will your novel be translated into Hungarian?
So we don't know about Hungarian yet. I'm so fortunate to say it has been picked up by Italy and Romania.
Wonderful.
So hopefully
it's a start.
It's a start. Yeah. So, but I don't have any word on Hungary yet.
Yeah. You know, I think, and I'm not speaking to this from any kind of insider information, but I think if Hungarian readers write to their favorite Hungarian publishers and say, this is a book you should pick up, you know, if there's a grassroots movement, you know, and of course, I'm sure the wonderful folks at Atria are already on top of this.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm sure they are.
But you know what? A little email now and then from a reader can't hurt either, right? Just, you should publish this book in Hungarian. So, you know,
so wise.
Go ahead.
So wise.
You know,
Yes.
I know that a lot of my, speaking from, the reason I suggest this is that I know that a lot of my earlier books in the Elm Creek Quilt series, I know that they were published in the Netherlands because they're a woman there who loved to quilt, and all of her quilting friends.
Amazing.
One of them was related to someone who worked at a publisher, and
Amazing.
and just kind of
Wow.
nudge them to get the books. That's what I've been told. I mean, but I don't know. I think that
It can't hurt.
Sorry?
I said it can't hurt. Absolutely.
It can't
Yes.
hurt. But I'm sure that everyone at Atria is already, because you've got a wonderful, as you said, you've got a wonderful team over there, and I know they have your back and they're working on it. But
Absolutely.
a little nudge from readers can't hurt. That's what I say. Well, let's see what maybe some of our readers, this is what Erin Armstrong says about historical fiction. She says, as a lifelong learner, reading historical fiction means, and everything scrolled up, means I learn a lot about new things, while also giving me a reading escape into a world of characters at the end of the day, snuggled up in bed with a cup of tea. Oh, then if you haven't read When the Summer Was Ours yet, this you will love it. Just trust me, because that. And then Christine said, I love historical fiction because it transports me to what it would be like for my ancestors. And then she says that you are a gifted novelist, Roxanne. So you have a fan.
Oh, thank you. Well,
So, and it's, so you've got a lot of fans in the chat, and I don't know if they're all from Wisconsin, probably, maybe most of them. I don't know. And so, yeah, so I think that, I think what everybody wants to know, when they are done reading When the Summer Was Ours, and then if they haven't yet, when they go back and read your first novel, The Girl They Left Behind, what can they look forward to coming from you next? Do you have anything in the works? You're not going to make us wait too long, are you?
I will certainly try not to. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
we will be patient. We will be patient, right, everybody? Because it will be worth the wait, and we all know that. But we still want to know.
Okay.
What can we look forward to?
There's two stories. One that I've been actually, well, yes, I'm in a bit of a test running both stories right now, but the one that I've actually done the most research on, that really has my interest is based on two women from very different worlds and backgrounds who both find themselves imprisoned in a gulag camp during Stalin's era in the 1950s.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yeah, it's a heavy one, but it's actually,
I'm sold. You had me at gulag.
Well, hopefully it can be a little uplifting, because it's also about how they combine their very individual talents to bring some lightness and some hope and optimism to this very dark and bleak place in history. And also in the process find a way to, and now I'm about to give away a spoiler, so I better stop it.
Okay, all right. We will be satisfied
beyond the gulag camp.
We will be satisfied with that.
Okay.
And then so, well, that sounds fantastic. I can't wait to read it. No pressure. No pressure.
I know. Gosh, right, once your book is done, you're so ready. You're so ready to dive into the next book. And I've been, actually, as I said, I've been researching it for a while, and I've been writing some trial pages, kind of trying to figure out how to grab the story, which I find, like, for me, once I figure out how to grab the story, it flows, but that formative stage where you're trying to get the format down and the structure is what requires the most time. So,
yeah, you have to kind of find the story and figure out what is the best way to tell this story. And that a different author covering the same era might come up to a completely different story, but that's what's so amazing. And that's why there can be so many books about World War II, because every author focuses on a different facet and brings something of themselves and their own history and their own experiences to that story. And so it's a different experience.
Yeah,
it's a very different. Go ahead. Go.
No,
You-
no, I'm agreeing with you. I couldn't agree more. You know, I mean, it's your prism. It's the
Yeah,
way that you see that fact that really makes the story. You know, it's like,
it's
so
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, oh, we could talk about this. We could talk about this all night. I could talk about this all night. It
So
would be
can
hard
I.
to do that without spoilers, though. Whew, there's so
Right.
much to talk about. But I guess, I think it sounds like you have a lot of fans in this group, so they probably already have their copies. They probably have already read them. But what is it that, if anything, is there anything in particular that you really hope readers take away from reading When the Summer Was Ours? Is there anything in particular that you really hope resonates with them?
I mean, I hope that the story of true love really resonates and touches their hearts, because it's really the cornerstone of this novel. But I do hope that they will learn a little bit. And I mean, I don't, my job is not to teach, but I hope that it gives them some insight or even a small perspective of what the Romani went through
Yeah.
during World War II, because that for me was such a driver for wanting to write this story. And so I mean, I think that's right in general. What we hope with historical fiction is that
Mhm.
it entertains, but also brings something new or unexpected to the
Right.
reader.
Right. And then it encourages them to go on. Now, do you have books listed that you recommend do you have like an acknowledgements or something where
Yeah,
you say it?
I didn't write them in the acknowledgments, but if you're
Okay.
interested in Romani culture and music in particular,
Yes.
as it evolved through the Balkan states, there's one called Princes Among Men, and
Yes, you
it's not a
mentioned.
very big book, but it's it just gives such a good sense of their experience of and with music in particular. And there's also a ton of resources online if you Google Romani music or Lautari, as they're known in Romanian. I did a lot of research also, on the Romani experience in Romania. And again, it was fascinating because reading these stories and watching these films and interviews, I felt like I was there, and it was like, wow,
Yeah.
this was exactly my experience. So there's quite a bit of it, but it's more about their current life or history as it evolved through the Balkan states in modern time. There isn't as much. I mean, it's actually starting to percolate now more and more. There was an article in in Times Magazine that came out about this, and I think it was just about a year ago or so. It was after I'd written the book about this aspect of the Holocaust that was really overlooked in history.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I think you did so beautifully in
Thank
your
you.
novel. You have this wonderful, this marvelous love story, but then you also, with the choice of your setting and with focusing on Alejandro as a member of the Romani people, and you shed light on something that I think most of us who have heard about, some of the atrocities of World War II, you've heard about it, but you brought it from maybe the footnotes right up, right into the front, right into the focus.
Thank you.
And I think that was, but not in a didactic way, in a way that just was organically infused in with the rest of your storytelling. And I think the people will of course be enchanted by the storytelling, but I also think your readers will feel enlightened
I
by
hope so. Yeah, thank you. I really hope so. Because as you said, I mean, it's a known fact that the Nazis targeted not just the Jewish population,
right.
and not even just the Romani population. I mean, they targeted really anyone that was
Undesirable.
in the way of their crazy
Right.
ideology.
Right.
But what maybe people didn't know is that a quarter of the Roma population in Europe, which is, when you think about the magnitude of this loss, it's really mind-boggling. 1 in 4 people of the Romani population died during World War II, either in the camps or because of circumstances of the war. So that's what I wanted to kind of bring to the forefront.
Well, I think you did so just absolutely wonderfully.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to just see if there's anything Aaron Armstrong says, your job may not be a teacher, but you are teaching.
Oh,
I teach undergraduate communications, and my students often tell me how they learn through stories. There you go.
that's wonderful.
And then Christine chimed in. I agree, Erin. I work with a history at college as an instructional designer, and this would be an amazing novel to add. Very nice.
Thank
And
you.
Carrie says, Roxanne, you are a magnificent writer. Your
Oh,
stories truly pull in the reader. Such an incredible gift. Carrie, I couldn't agree more. You're
you
absolutely
guys are
right.
amazing. Thank you so much. That that means so much to me. It really, really, truly. This is why I write.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is why we write. To make some kind of an impression or resonate.
Right.
Put
You're
something out there
reaching out,
different.
you're communicating with other
Yeah.
people, it's
Yeah.
across, boundaries and borders and across time, you're communicating with other people. And it's just one of the magic of books, the
Yes.
magic of storytelling, that,
Absolutely.
you are taking us back into this period of history and introducing us to these people and these culture and all of these events, and in a way that we wouldn't have without you there to provide us with this wonderful book. And if you want to pick up your own copy of it, which I strongly encourage you to do, you might have noticed, I think this is a pretty amazing book. You might have picked up on it tonight. You can get a copy from one of my very favorite independent bookstores, Boswell Book Company in Milwaukee, in the great state of Wisconsin. And if you look in the chat, there is a purchase link, and it's 10% off. Very nice. And Daniel has kindly provided a link for you. You can click on that. And I know as a customer that they have excellent customer service, and you will have your book presently. Oh, and you can get it, and they will get it to you right away. You're not only supporting, you're not only getting a wonderful book that you are going to love, but you are also going to support an independent bookstore. And independent bookstores like Boswell are the ones who make conversations like this possible by
Absolutely.
hosting these wonderful events. So, especially until we can all meet again in person, it's just so wonderful. So thank you to Daniel. Thank you to Boswell Book Company. And especially thank you to all of you who attended and who posted your questions and your comments. And thank you especially to the woman of the hour, Roxanne Veletzos,
Thank
with
you,
her
Jennifer.
wonderful book. You are going to love it. Just trust me on this one. You're going to love it. And then, we'll all just wait very kindly and patiently, not complaining, until we can see what you come up with next, because
Thank
it'll be
you.
worth the wait. So thank you very much, Roxanne, and thank you, Daniel, and thank you, readers.
Yeah, and I did ditto on all fronts. Jennifer, it's been an honor and such a joy to have this conversation with you.
And you can see it's night. That's how long we talk.
Yeah, it's
Day
here as
when we
well.
started.
And
You
I
could see a
appreciate
tree out that window when we started.
right. It all happened very quickly. And all my gratitude to Boswell Books as well, because as Jennifer said, without independent bookstores, these events would not be possible.
Yep.
So I'm indebted. Thank you.
Well, we're honored to
And
have
thank
both
you all
of
for
you.
attending and the amazing comments.
Thank you both. We wouldn't have a bookstore without you. Thanks to everyone for coming. You can't buy it from us, buy it from your local bookstore. You could say Boswell sent you. That's okay.
Yes.
Tell
them I sent you. No.
Okay, Jennifer and Boswell.
No, tell them Daniel sent you.
Well, you know what? You can
tell them we both
sent
sent you.
That's
best.
Yeah.
It was a team effort.
Yes,
So.
I like it. I like that.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.